The greatest catcher to play the game of baseball never stepped foot on an MLB diamond. There have been many debates regarding who the greatest catcher in baseball history is. The two names that are brought up the most frequently include Yogi Berra and Johnny Bench. Yogi Berra's calling card is 10 World Series rings, the most of any player in the history of the game. He is also a 3-time MVP winner and 18-time All-Star. Berra was great at both offense and defense, but never won a Gold Glove, albeit it wasn't created until his career was more than halfway over. Either way, seems like a pretty compelling argument. Then there's Johnny Bench, who's also known for his elite defensive capabilities, winning 10 Gold Gloves in a row. He won 2 MVPs, Rookie of the Year, and made 14 All-Star teams. This also seems like a pretty compelling argument. As historically great as these two players are, I believe that Josh Gibson has a case to be considered as the greatest catcher of all time. In terms of his Negro League stats that MLB officially made a part of the official records, Josh Gibson for his career had an incredible .374 batting average in over 2,500 plate appearances, which unfortunately has him 500 shy of qualifying for the highest batting average for a career in MLB history. That would have ranked him higher than all-time leader Ty Cobb, who hit .366 for his career. Gibson throughout his career definitely had more than 3,000 plate appearances, but the Negro Leagues back when he played were sporadic when tallying and keeping record of stats. Today, I'll try my best to separate what is officially recorded versus what has been said by reporters, teammates, and opposing players. Besides a historically high batting average, Gibson posted an absurd .214 OPS plus for his career, the highest of all time if it would have qualified, meaning that he was more than twice as good as the league average hitter at the time. His .720 slugging and 1.178 OPS are both considerably higher than Babe Ruth, who, as you'll learn later on, was compared to Gibson throughout his career. In terms of official MLB stats, Gibson's 165 homers and 2,155 plate appearances nearly put him on par with Hank Aaron's home run pace for his career. Hypothetically speaking, had Gibson kept up the home run pace for a career with an equal number of plate appearances as Hammer and Hank, he would have hit 753 for his career, which would put him just 2 behind for third on the all-time home run leaderboard. Now, in terms of unofficial records, it is estimated that Gibson had a total way higher than that of even the hypothetical total, as he is credited with hitting approximately 800 home runs during his time in professional baseball, which would put him at number 1 on the all-time leaderboard, ahead of even Barry Bonds. That number includes the games he played in the Negro Leagues, California Winter League, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Caribbean, and other independent baseball leagues. With that being said, let's dive deeper into the story of baseball's greatest catcher, so you can truly understand why referring to stats aren't always the end-all be-all way of evaluating a player. Josh Gibson was born in 1911 in Buena Vista, Georgia, to parents who worked as sharecroppers for much of his early life. Gibson's father, Mark, traveled and began to work for a steel mill in Pittsburgh to save up enough money to move his family. At 14 years old, his father moved the Gibson family to Pittsburgh in 1924 rather than continuing to farm and raise crops. After the 9th grade is when Josh Gibson dropped out and would eventually pursue a career in baseball. At 16 years old, he joined the Gimbels AC team, named after the sponsor of the team, a department store reminiscent of Macy's in modern day. Gibson worked at Gimbels on the side of playing for their amateur league team. In 1929, he was signed away from Gimbels, joining the Crawford Colored Giants, who at the time were a semi-pro team based out of Pittsburgh. It took some coaxing, but they eventually convinced Gibson to join their team. It was around this time when he married Helen Mason and was able to provide for the both of them by playing baseball and continuing to work at Gimbels. In the heart of summer in 1930, Gibson got his first taste of professional baseball while he was a spectator. Now, for some context, the manager and co-owner of the Homestead Grays told him that the Grays needed a backup catcher, and it let Gibson know of the possibility of joining the team in the near future. On July 25th, as the story goes, he was invited to replace Homestead Grays catcher Buck Ewing after he injured his hand. Word traveled fast around Pittsburgh, and Gibson's reputation for hitting massive home runs was already well known around the league. The Homestead Grays manager invited Gibson to suit up in Ewing's uniform, and the rest was history. Gibson played out the rest of the game at catcher, and the very next day was signed by the Homestead Grays to officially become a professional baseball player. The immense joy that Gibson felt from signing with the Grays was immediately lost when in August of 1930 his wife Helen passed away, giving birth to twins. The twins survived, but unfortunately he couldn't stay with them long and left them in the care of his late wife Helen's parents as Josh Gibson continued traveling with the team and played through his grief. Josh Gibson amazingly continued to play at a superhuman level during this trying time and hit one of the longest home runs in history that we'll discuss later on in the video. Gibson played one full season with the Grays in 1931 before leaving to join the Crawfords, with whom he won 3 home run titles in 5 years with. The Crawfords promised him $100 a month as a signing bonus if he joined their squad. Not only did Gibson win his 3rd Negro League batting title in 1936, he also reportedly hit 84 home runs. That's 11 more homers than the highest total in MLB history, when Barry Bonds hit 73 in 2001. There were several other times throughout his career where it was estimated that he hit between 72 and 75 home runs, with 1931 and 1932 most likely when this occurred during. It was somewhere in his dominating 10-year stretch that people started to refer to Gibson as the Black Babe Ruth. But for the many players and fans of the Negro Leagues who watched both play, they started to refer to Babe Ruth as the White Josh Gibson, as even the great Bambino didn't compare to the legendary bat that Gibson swung throughout his career. After the 1936 season came to a close, he followed his battery mate Satchel Paige to the Dominican Republic to play with the Trujillo Dragons. He played for 1 season before returning to the Homestead Grays in 1937. One incredible feat that needs to be mentioned is that Josh Gibson won the Triple Crown in back-to-back seasons. He accomplished this in 1936 and 1937. He was the first to accomplish the feat since Oscar Charleston over a decade earlier. In over 80 years' time, no MLB player has been able to accomplish the feat that both Charleston and Gibson achieved. After the 1938 season, Gibson played just 1 officially logged game in the Negro Leagues in 1940 before playing 2 years in the Mexican and Puerto Rican leagues between the 1940 and 41 seasons. Gibson's return to the Homestead Grays in 1942 was a great statistical season, but in 1943 he really one-upped himself. He posted a .466 batting average that is officially recognized by MLB. There are several different players that are recognized by different statistical databases as the best average in a single season, but most of them have significantly fewer at-bats and plate appearances than some of the other top dogs on that leaderboard. Regardless of any ranking, Gibson was able to put together a legendary career year that saw him have 109 RBIs, 20 homers, a .560 on-base percentage, an .867 slugging, and a 1.427 OPS with a 281 OPS plus. He did all this in just 69 games. I feel absurd even saying those numbers, but those are all official MLB stats that Gibson put up during his 1943 campaign. He led the league in 12 major offensive categories this season as well. If Gibson had continued his torrid home run and RBI pace over 154 games, which was the amount of games that MLB played back then, he would have accumulated 47 home runs and driven in 243 runs.
Wow.
To put that into perspective, Hack Wilson holds the MLB record for RBIs in a single season, with 191. Now imagine those stats in 162 games. The absurdity of Josh Gibson's career continues to baffle me. In the midst of putting together this insane season, Josh Gibson was diagnosed with a brain tumor and even was hospitalized. He declined getting surgery for fear that it would make things worse. Now there's one thing I know as a certainty. Gibson didn't let his diagnosis stop him from playing the game he loved. With his health declining, he spent the next 3 years doing very Josh Gibson-like things, hitting home runs and finishing off his immense legacy that will live on forever in baseball history. On January 20th, 1947, at just 35 years old, Gibson suffered a stroke that took away his life while he was at his home in Pittsburgh, back where his baseball career all began as a teenager. One thing that I want to make clear is that there's no way to know with 100% certainty how Josh Gibson would have performed in the major leagues. But against white ball clubs which Gibson played in exhibition games, he hit .375 for his career, so I think it's safe to say he probably would have done just fine. But don't forget, the Negro Leagues contain some of the greatest players in the history of baseball. The obvious one is Jackie Robinson. The first African-American baseball player to play in the major leagues, it became an icon not just for integration, but for the game of baseball itself. Other players that made huge impacts on the sport include Willie Mays, Larry Doby, and Roy Campanella, all of which are Hall of Famers who spent the majority of their careers in Major League Baseball. Mays spent some time in the Negro Leagues before playing 23 MLB seasons. Doby played a few seasons in the Negro Leagues before spending 14 MLB seasons between 3 different clubs, and Campanella played 10 years, all with the Dodgers. Then there's Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson's battery mate when they were teammates on the Pittsburgh Crawfords. Paige is one of the greatest pitchers to ever pitch, who didn't get into the MLB until he was 42 years old. He played for 6 seasons and put together some very successful years. Some highlights from his career include his rookie season at age 42, he put up a 2.48 ERA in 72 2/3 innings. And in 1952, at age 45, he threw 138 innings and put up a 3.07 ERA, making the All-Star team. He made the All-Star team the following season as well, this time at age 46, and put together a 3.53 ERA in 117 1/3 innings. Some of the greatest players to ever play spent the majority of their careers in the Negro Leagues. There are too many to mention, but to name a few, you've got Cool Papa Bell, Smokey Joe Williams, John Henry Lloyd, Oscar Charleston, Buck Leonard, and of course, Josh Gibson. The highest level of respect, praise, and proof of someone's talents are by what their peers say about them. Josh Gibson has all the respect in the world from several Hall of Fame talents that rave about how tremendous of a player he was. The first one I'll share is from Hall of Famer Monte Irvin, who played the first 10 years of his career in the Negro Leagues, tearing up the league with his insane offensive numbers, and taking his talents to the New York Giants for 7 years and the Cubs for his very last season in professional baseball. He made 7 All-Star teams, won 2 World Series, and won 2 batting titles. I think it's safe to say that when he says something about the talent of another player, it's reliable information. He was quoted as saying that, "I played with Willie Mays and against Hank Aaron. They were tremendous players, but they were no Josh Gibson." Hold on a second here. So you're meaning to tell me that arguably the greatest 5-tool player in the history of the game and the former all-time home run leader weren't even as good as Josh Gibson? That's an insane comparison. Not only was Monte Irvin comparing Josh Gibson to the likes of Mays and Aaron, he believed that Gibson was better than both of them. Roy Campanella said that Josh Gibson was not only the greatest catcher, but the greatest ball player I ever saw. A 3-time MVP, 11-time All-Star, and batting title winner said that Josh Gibson was the greatest player he ever watched playing baseball. Yeah, that's some pretty high praise. Walter Johnson, arguably the greatest pitcher of all time, marveled at how impressive Josh Gibson was, even defensively. He can do everything. He hits the ball a mile, and he catches easy. Might as well be in a rocking chair. Throws like a rifle. Bill Dickey isn't as good a catcher. That was said almost 2 decades after Johnson had retired from the MLB. And that guy Walter mentioned that isn't as good a catcher as Gibson? Oh, he's just some chump who went to 11 All-Star games and won 8 World Series. Once again, are you kidding me? These guys are Hall of Famers, and they're not even holding a candle to what Josh Gibson was doing. Unbelievable. There's a really interesting nugget of information that is not confirmed to be true, but it's worth sharing just for the hypothetical it creates. When Walter Johnson was quoted saying what he said about Gibson, Clark Griffith, the Senators' manager at the time, wanted to sign Gibson in 1943, but decided not to. This was 2 years before Jackie Robinson debuted in MLB. Even Gibson's battery mate, Satchel Paige, said that Gibson was the greatest player he ever pitched to. These are just a few quotes from some of the best ball players in the game's history, all of which speak volumes as to what kind of player Josh Gibson was. A prolific power hitter who was not just comparable, but better than some of the best players that the game of baseball had to offer. Another testament to how fantastic of a player Josh Gibson was throughout his career in the Negro Leagues is on his Hall of Fame plaque in the Cooperstown Hall of Fame. It reads, "Considered greatest slugger in Negro Baseball Leagues, power-hitting catcher who hit almost 800 home runs in league and independent baseball during his 17-year career." There were reports crediting Gibson in 1967 with hitting a ball nearly 600 feet at Yankee Stadium. The ball that was hit landed 2 feet from the top of the bleacher wall, which was measured to be 580 feet. If that ball kept on going without that wall there, it was estimated it could have traveled 700 feet. Now I want to make something very clear. None of this was 100% confirmed, but considering that the reporter from Sporting News was in attendance that game and reported the distance of where the ball landed, it's still reasonable to say that 500 plus feet is a logical estimate as to how far the ball traveled. That's still incredibly impressive, and this isn't the only time where Josh Gibson connected on a ball and hit it an absurd distance. When people are talking about Gibson's absurd power and stretching the truth a little to make their point, you start to understand as a pitcher back then what you're dealing with. Just some guy who takes your nasty spitball into the next zip code. Josh Gibson was everything you could ever want and more. 25 years after the tragedy that took away one of baseball's all-time greats, Gibson was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame and became forever enshrined in Cooperstown, home of the baseball history that so many, including myself, enjoy celebrating. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys learned something new today. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.